Comrades, today we gather here to discuss when a weak force, us, meets an unmovable, giganormous, the size of Galactus object called Soldier of Godric. This mother trucker is the hardest boss in the game due to his huge poise and all elemental resistance. No, comrades and comradinas, you know why we're all here, and I'll let the person introduce thyself.
Heed my words. I am Malenia, Blade of Mikola.
You fucking bitch, why you bully me?
Now, if you are a courageous, brave, fearless Tarnished that got the best of Malenia in a 1v1 fight like me, I salute you, my dear sir. Indeed, we belong to a rare breed because 70% of the time I watch streamers fighting her, they have a summon. Needless to say, the Marika statue before her fog wall works more than a Chinese owner of a store. What's more, I must say I have zero respect for the likes of him.
Let's go! You ain't that bad! You ain't that bad!
Don't get me wrong, this guy must be a great person. But as a gamer, to call Malenia not a hard experience while annihilating her using the most broken summon in the game is just baffling and an insult to people who spent 3 days crying blood because they couldn't stop listening to her goddamn introduction. Please, whenever you play a game in easy mode, because let's face it, Fromsoft did not want to implement a blatant difficulty screen for you to choose either easy, normal or hard. Yet, they did implement an easy mode by adding spirit ashes. I guess that was done not to break their reputation of, we only create hard games, you see? You can't choose easy. Well, again, whenever you play a game in easy mode, do know that there are other people who are playing the experience as it was intended to be played, and thus don't discredit their efforts by saying their complaints were in vain. After all, I'm not asking people to finish the game doing a let me solo her cosplay with 0 armor, rune level 1 hitless run. None of that. But it is plain as day that the ideal experience in Fromsoft games is to have a hard time, overcome a challenge, and go for the next one, just like in real life. When you beat these challenges first, second try because you used a broken mechanic in the game, that rewarding experience is no longer there, and thus the game loses its purpose. At least for me. Rant's over. Anyways, let's get to the point of the video. Why do I consider her to be the only unfair boss in Fromsoft's Soulsborne RIng series? Is there even a word to encapsulate them all nowadays? Point 1. You don't have as much error window as with other bosses, because every time you lose health, she gains some of her own, for each hit. That means if you get hit a few times, you won't make it to the end of the battle, because oh boy, this brings me to point 2. Point 2. She has 2 phases. To compensate for the healing for each hit as if she's a hunter, Malenia makes it even harder by adding a second phase where she now inflicts Scarlet Rot with some of her moves, on top of the healing of course. If by any reason you don't know what is Scarlet Rot even though you're watching a Malenia video, it's basically an illness that makes the player's character lose health over time, unless you have finite consumables to negate it. And I remark finite, because you will die a lot. There will come a point where you won't have any more consumables, so you have to go out to farm for some more if you really need them, and come back to the arena to die some more and go farm again and die some more and go farm again, which breaks the pace of the game because it is really boring. Or you could just get good and don't get hit. Simple, right?
No.
This is a minor nitpick though, because there are other 3 ways that I know of to get cured. There's a flask that cures you and raises your immunity, only once per life though. But I guess you have to be pretty clumsy to get afflicted by Scarlet Rot twice in the same fight, let alone with the immunity increased. Then you have Flames Cleanse Me, which is an incantation that requires 12 of faith to use. It heals you from all ailments, and it's easier to use than the other incantation called Law of Regression, which requires a whooping 36 intelligence. But, I'm mentioning this because, as we all know, every time we fight a boss or an enemy that raises a negative status in our character, it is kinda annoying to have to pay attention to that bar that is increasing every time and have to counter it, to decrease it and fight the boss at the same time. Point 3. She staggers, but she hyper-armors. At her own will. Yep, fighting her is like gambling. You can perfectly evade a string, calculate the frames of the movements as if this is fucking Tekken, and react accordingly, Like other fights where you get rewarded with a few hits if you evade correctly. Well, here is not always this way. It is a common occurrence for her to start a new movement right after finishing a previous one. I'm sure there is a brief window in between, but it is so small you'd swear you need to be a fucking AI using TAS to get hits in those situations. Point 4. This point is an assumption based on observation and research. Sekiro was going to have a DLC about Tomoe, which was cancelled so Fromsoftware could put their whole attention on Elden RIng. But it looks like they recycled a few things from there to be included in Elden RIng.
Like goddamn Malenia.
Some of her moves are straight out of Sekiro. For instance, her kick, a memento from the Simple Temple monks. She parries us like some enemies would. It even sparks when blades clash, as it did when we parried as Sekiro or we were parried by an enemy. By the way, she parries us with a katana nonetheless. She has a telegraphed thrust attack that is only missing the red kanji on top of her for us to Mikiri parry it. Some of her strings are clearly made to be parried because they track very highly and have a weird hitbox to be evaded. And last but not least, let's get to point 5 for this one because it deserves a point for itself. Point 5. Waterfowl Dance. I know you knew this was coming. If you are not convinced that she is a Sekiro character slapped in this game without much adaptation, look no further than this move to convince yourself. When she says "fuck you, gravity" and goes into the air for more than a jump, you know you're screwed. She has 4 rounds of fast-paced slashes that would make you believe she's Virgil's wife. All of the move is quote-unquote easily dodgeable if she starts this move while you're at a medium to long distance from her, because the first 2 rounds chase you around the map, but not so much, so you can just run away. When the 3rd round comes at you, and it will because it will track you everywhere, dodge into it, and for the 4th round, dodge away from her. Now, what happens if she starts this attack while you're close to her? Well, I can show it to you. I've spent some time in Reddit checking out people who say, use this, use that, to counter the Waterfowl Dance. And the 2 most recommended items were Freezebot and Bloodhound Step. Let me tell you why these 2 do not cut it. The first one, the Freezebot. It brings us to the same problem we had in point number 2. If you run out of materials, you have to go out and farm from some more, which is tedious and brings us to the same boredom level as farming blood vials in Bloodborne. And number 2, Bloodhound Step, is less annoying, but it still makes you give up an Ash of War of your choice because you quote-unquote need this one to avoid her consistently. You give up the freedom of choice, which makes the fight less original because everyone and their mother go for Bloodhound Step. Furthermore, there are weapons that cannot be equipped with this Ash of War. What if I'm using the Devour Scepter? It cannot change Ashes of War. This reminds me of Mohg's boss fight, where you need the flask variation that protects you from his nihil attack. However, the latter is much more necessary than Bloodhound Step. It's stupid, in my opinion, when the game tries to force you to play one way. Even more Elden RIng, which is a game open to hundreds of classes with different weapons, to make its replayability increase. The only reasonable solution that I saw was to block the first volley of hits with a shield, which solves half of the problem because, well, she still heals. All in all, my conclusion is Malenia is a poorly designed boss. The cutscenes, the dialogue, the lore behind her, everything is excellent, and I think Fromsoft really thought we are creating a character who assures she has never known defeat. So we have some big damn shoes to fill. Let's give her as much bullshit as we can. The beauty about Fromsoft games is that people's experiences tend to be different throughout their playthroughs. Many times a boss that turned to be excruciatingly hard for me was a cakewalk for my mates, and vice versa, because of our different build and playstyles. With this video, I am narrating my experience. You care to tell me what's yours? I would love to debate them in the chat. Bye!